morning and welcome to the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com. Got one more day of LC and I doing a little money ball in place of our buddy Homer, but maybe I'll be the Greek god of walks for this episode and help us get on base. But we got Paul Wadlington batting cleanup, still hitting homers. We got another great show as we go through, a first round matchup in the college football playoff. Thank everybody for joining. Paul, I'm springing this on you. This is going to be on Texas jersey. It's a little
playoff
gaudy.
First round.
A little gaudy.
But also the achievement. You know how so Joe, did you grow up? You're younger than me, obviously. Did you graduate from 6th grade? Did you graduate from junior high?
Yes.
That's pathetic.
But it wasn't presented by Allstate.
Okay. But you know how we memorialize and celebrate these little minor things? My son had a preschool graduation.
I did too.
Okay. Well, it started with your generation, and that explains a lot. But playoff first round. Yes, I do understand going to playoffs is a great achievement, probably more than Joe graduating preschool. But it is both gaudy and the celebration of nonsense.
Hey, I like that logo. I don't like that patch, but that's neither here nor there. We're going to talk about the game that patch is memorializing, the kindergarten graduation that we're all going to pack DKR for. But we'll do what we do every Tuesday, look at the stats in the first round matchup. First time ever that Texas is facing Clemson in the sport of American football. Look at their schedule, the ACC, their out-of-conference play, the ACC championship. And we'll go over what makes Cade Klubnik tick within that offense. And again, thank you all for joining. Appreciate everybody jumping in. So just kind of off the top, looking at Clemson, basically when you look at Alabama, team of the 2010s, Clemson has that good conversation for being number 2, maybe them in Georgia, but Clemson's got those national titles. What has kind of changed in the 2020s, and yet how did Clemson maybe kind of get it back to a certain extent this year?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting. The way people talk about Dabo now, you'd swear he's just this rube who's never accomplished anything because he's too slow to get on the NIL train. But the fact is, Clemson is the runner-up of the 2010s. I mean, you nailed it. And some of those teams really played at or above their level. I mean, he got them sky high for those big games, for the playoffs, for bowls. He's been excellent in big game preparation. Certainly playing in the ACC is helpful. I mean, that you're not going to rack up a lot of upset losses playing in the ACC if you've built a powerhouse. But Dabo did an incredible job, and he did it on the back of elite quarterbacks, elite pass catchers, and elite defenses built on the defensive line in the trenches. And so why did Clemson fall off? People say, well, NIL. No, they actually fell off a little bit in recruiting before they fell off, and then they didn't use NIL to supplement. And so when they lost those sort of difference-making quarterbacks, it took a while they had to insert a freshman, Cade Klubnik, who played like a freshman. And then as a sophomore, Cade had raised his game a little, but he didn't have the surrounding supporting cast, particularly at wide receiver, to help buoy him. And think about those Clemson teams, Joe. They had some amazing wide receivers. Just
Justin Ross, all those guys.
3 NFL guys there, all out there at once, usually. Mm-hmm. And they had pretty average offensive lines. And they compensated with it by spreading the field, having an elite, often dual threat quarterback, and then just having these stud receivers on the outside threatening you, not to mention some pretty good running backs. So that all fell off. And then when their regular recruiting and development fell off, Dabo refused to use NIL to supplement. And that has been the issue for them sort of falling off. But if falling off is that they get to wear the playoff first round All-State patch, then I guess that's a pretty decent fall off, right?
The other thing is there was a brain drain there. They kept trying to say, we're bringing our guys up. We're bringing our guys up.
Yes.
Venables leaving was big, and they did not replace him well. Tony Elliott, I think, the guy who went to Virginia, He was a big part of it.
Big recruiter.
They did not. They tried to keep doing the Clemson thing and just like, we got our guy. And Brandon Streeter was the epitome of the failure of that. And so they went and got Garrett Riley, went outside the family for offense. And that's led to, like you mentioned, Klubnik finding a little bit of a higher level and their offense performing pretty well. So I see this. We'll get to Klubnik strategy specifically later on in this video, because you have to dedicate a lot of strategy to Cade Klubnik with how Clemson uses him. But we're going to do our normal stats run through. Mine's going to look a little bit different than Homer's, but it'll have much of the same information. We can kind of run through some of the standard stats relatively quickly. If there's anything that pops out to you, feel free to grab me. Clemson on the left, Texas on the right. Both teams score or can put yards on the board. Both teams are decently balanced, but put up their big yards through the air. Anything really stand out on the offensive part up top?
Yeah, well, Clemson on offense has unfortunately looked a little like Texas on offense, in that they've got a decent scoring average, but it's an average, and it doesn't show you the trend. Clemson has played a little bit better quality of defense at the end of the year, and they've also, of course, experienced some injuries that we documented on Inside Texas at running back, and they've fallen off. So scored 17 against South Carolina, 24 against Pitt in a very close game. They had to win on a last-second Klubnik run. 24 against Virginia Tech. And then, of course, against SMU, the scoreboard says 34-31. Shootout, right?
No.
Not a shootout.
After a certain point in the third quarter.
Yeah, a bunch of short fields. And then SMU didn't do their good scouting, and they didn't take away the deep ball to Bryant Wesco. Once they did that, Clemson was just holding on to win the game. And SMU was coming back furiously. So that Clemson offense, these numbers are a little deceiving because they've really fallen off a little bit. And I think they're going to have to play hero ball against us. And this is, if you guys are old Big 12 fans, which all of us were not too long ago, you're familiar with what this looks like. Spread offense, quarterback is either throwing it or running it. And not a lot of offload, a lot of usage rate, as they like to say, Joe Cook.
We'll keep on going. Total defense, my favorite stat, still indicative when it's, number three is number three, unless you're an academy.
I love that I'm the old and I'm having to get Joe on board for like advanced statistics and contextualized. And he's like, nope, I'm a baseball guy. I know better. I just don't care. I like looking at raw stats.
To a point. The one that stands out here to me is turnover margin. Texas puts the ball on the ground a little bit more than it should. The quarterback throws interceptions a little bit more than they should. They've not had great fumble luck, it seems like, this year, and the Georgia game was a pretty good example of that for Texas. But Clemson keeps the ball and then gets the right amount of turnovers, and that's why their margin is one of the best in the country. Let's see what else is there. Anything third down conversion percentage, that's going to be an interesting one to track because, again, the hero ball aspect, fourth down, the same.
Joe, if it's Clemson ball on our 11-yard line, second down, they go empty set, it's a draw.
Mm-hmm.
Just FYI.
Keep a look on that.
Quarterback draw.
Anything else? Red zone, Texas favor, kind of. And red zone is always a little bit misleading because that's percentage of drives where it ends in a score. If I could find the touchdown percentage, that would not be 29, and I doubt that would be 40 as well. Net punting. Here's the thing. If you look at some of their advanced statistics, which we'll get to in a second, this may be a little bit more even than this number shows, but it also kind of shows why Texas went to the portal for a punter. What do you think about this battle? First downs offense, how successful Clemson is on first down versus Texas barely letting anything happen on first down.
Yeah, that's going to be a big battle, right? People always talk about third down defense and red zone defense, and that's obviously critical. But how you start the drive is often determinative of that drive. And if your 1st and 10 becomes a 2nd and 1, you're on a very different footing than if your 1st and 10 becomes a 2nd and 12. And I think Clemson's going to be pretty predictable. I mean, we got to get in the game flow. You had a 2-week off period. Clemson, both Garrett Riley, and Dabo, they're going to plan up a lot of stuff, man. They're playing with house money. So they're going to do some stuff on offense, particularly early, to try to attack us and catch us sleeping.
Sorry. Yeah.
Joe, what's up?
I was messing with a different tab. There we go.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, I think first down is going to be determinative. But look, it's going to be spread offense, Cade Klubnik show. He's going to be running the ball. He's going to be throwing the ball. And Texas has to make him feel the weight of that over the course of the game, both physically hitting him, but also mentally challenging him. He doesn't turn it over a lot through the air, but fumbled it 8 times this year. And he's had a fumble in his last 5 consecutive games, 6 total fumbles over his last 5. And that is directly correlated to the drop-off and decline in their running back health. Klubnik is having to run the ball on regular downs much more, and it's not just quarterback scrambles. So that's something where when Texas hits them, they've got to make Klubnik feel them like Andrew Makuba, Gunnar Stockton felt Andrew Makuba.
Feels like a feature, not a bug with Westlake quarterbacks at this point.
That's right.
Penalties, that's one that stuck out to me. 6.5 per game. I remember the old adage. It's like, look, if you get an aggression penalty, you can live with it. The procedural penalties are what's going to be really costly. And it looks like Clemson's able to avoid that pretty well. Yep. But at the same time, they're going to have probably 106,000 people trying to upset them in that regard.
So, Joe, let me ask you, you're in Austin. What's the vibe, man? Are people fired up, or like, what has it not quite struck everyone yet that we've got a playoff game? Like, what's going on?
I think there's yes, I think that's part of it. I mean, we got Sark yesterday. It was basically a bye. I feel like people are just like coming out of the bye week, and don't really understand what's going on in Austin quite yet. I think it'll change. I think just the newness has people not knowing what to feel. I also think just the dialogue about the Texas offense right now is honestly dampening a little bit of excitement, because it's like, oh, it can't reach the year-end goals. Well, the first step's in front of you, and you can't hop, skip, and jump all the way there. But I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's quite as hyped up as obviously the first Georgia game or the SEC title. And our guy RT Young wrote something. It's like maybe people aren't used to the fact that, oh, you lose the SEC title game, but you're still in national title contention. Like that's a weird switch we have never had to turn on as following Texas, and most teams, maybe save for those Georgia and Alabama teams that kept battling over and over in the SEC title game. Nobody understands that except for them. So maybe it's just they haven't figured out exactly how quickly they need to get back onto their feet in that regard. But, Saturday will come around. All the favorite spots will be packed. I think everybody will be ready to go. You know who's always ready to go?
One of the biggest financial decisions you'll
I almost threw it to you.
I'm here. I'll just do that live. How about that? He's talking about Gabe Winslow, mortgage man extraordinaire. Hey, buying a house, it's the biggest financial decision any of us are going to make in our lives. You need the right team in your corner. By all means, get an elite realtor. Get an elite mortgage guy in your corner. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. Why? Gabe, 20 years in the industry, diehard Longhorn fan, and he is a mortgage broker. Joe, that means he doesn't work for a single big bank limited only to their portfolio of loans. Also, guess how many hours a big banker works per day, Joe. About 2.5. Gabe Winslow's putting in 10 and 12-hour days, kicking ass and helping Longhorns get mortgages. He's really sharp, former National Merit Scholar. He's got a law degree. This guy's overqualified to be doing mortgages. Let him do your mortgage. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. Let him know that powerful Joe Cook sent you, and he'll give you a special savings.
Thank you, Pauls. Let's look at the go through SP Plus, FPI for what it's worth at this point, and FEI. I like SP Plus. It's kind of a good way for everybody to dip their toe into advanced analytics because it doesn't look at points on the scoreboard. It looks at how far just what you're doing on a per play basis. Texas has been near the top all year, number 4 in overall, number 8 in offensive, number 2 in defensive, right behind Ohio State. And then, number 115 in special teams, which means that we talk about special teams being hidden yardage, that old cliche. And to me, knowing the per play aspect of SP Plus, that just means they're losing that hidden yardage at way too high of a clip.
Yeah. Hey, good news. Clemson's as bad at special teams as we are. So, although they did have a freshman kicker kick a 50-something yard field goal at the end of the game under pressure, not sure Texas fans feel that confident lining up in a similar situation. But, I think by the numbers, Clemson is a top 15 team, right? Texas is the top 3, top 4 team by the numbers. The other thing I would say, Joe, I don't know how you feel, but of the double seed playoff entrance, like double digit, got
Indiana, SMU, Clemson.
Which of the 3 would you rather play?
Indiana.
Yeah, I'd rather play Indiana or SMU.
Especially at home.
Yeah, I think our matchups are just better with those teams. But as I wrote in my Hero Ball Hopeful Breaking Down Cade Klubnik article in Inside Texas, you guys should all go join. Texas's defense is built to stop hero ball spread offenses. I mean, we don't give up explosives in our passing game. Our secondary is really sharp and really good. And we're pretty damn good at running down quarterbacks and playing in big open football. Anthony Hill is at his best when the field is big and he can see everything. Anthony Hill and sometimes our linebackers struggle a little bit in more traditional football. A team goes double tight, they're going to hand it off and run it. And, the running back's picking holes and they're doubling play side. And, that's where our linebackers cannot hit their fits. But when the spread, you can see everything playing linebacker. And it's just go. And it's run people down. Like, you're a freaking cheetah and there's a gazelle running on the step. Run it down. And we've got Trey Moore. We've got Colin Simmons. We've got Anthony Hill. We got a bunch of chasers, man. And I don't think that matches up well with Clemson.
I think there should be some muscle memory here for a lot of these guys because they faced Garrett Riley a couple of years ago, but
that's right.
They faced all these offenses, this type of offense, pretty regularly and fared well against it last year. We'll skip FPI. Another advanced stat, FEI. Brian Fremuth, I think, number 4 overall, 19 on offense. Yeah, 1 on defense, and a little bit more charitable 35 in special teams. Clemson is number 16 overall, which kind of, all these advanced stats kind of speak to your point. They're the 12 seed. They were ranked, I think, 16th by the committee, either 15th or 16th. They're a good team. They're a Power 5 champion, but it's not like this is an elite Clemson team of old. Anything from these, or do you want to get into some of the more specific stats? This is Homer's specialty, but I was able to scrounge up a few that we can go over.
Let's do it.
All righty. This untitled spreadsheet, offensive points per drive. See, I'm not just a total yardage merchant. I can get in depth on the stuff. Offensive points per drive for Clemson, 2.8, ranks 26th. Their offensive success rate, just under 51%, ranks 25th. Defensive points per drive, they allow 1.66. That's number 20. And then their defensive success rate's a little bit lower. Seems like an old PK defense, just under 42%, ranks 67. And then obviously, rank for if you're an offense and you're getting at least a field goal a drive, that's where you want to be. Under 2, also where you want to be on the defensive basis. Any of these, there's obviously one thing that sticks out here with the defensive success rate.
Yeah, and it's a weird thing about Clemson's D, Joe. So you watch them and you see who the studs are. They flash off the screen instantly. It's Peter Woods up front. It's TJ Parker, their rush end. They've got a good linebacker. They've got Mickens in the secondary. They have a good corner. But here's the deal. You sounds like, oh, well, they're stacked at every level. The other guys are just adequate, and they don't have good depth. So when they have to sub, they really feel it. And it kind of feels like, I don't know, maybe some of the Texas teams that weren't quite there. They weren't bad teams, but when the subs had to go in, you saw an immediate decline. And it's such that fans would be like dreading substitutions because the wheels are about to fall off. And that's kind of how I feel about Clemson.
And opposing coaches would see it too, and they would change their play calls.
See it. Yes. So hopefully Sark has some targets drawn on the back of a few guys that come in. But the thing is once you deal with some sort of their stars on defense, there are big plays available against this group, and they'll give up down success as well. So, yeah, you're going to see TJ Parker flash a little. If Kelvin Banks is healthy, you might not see him at all. You might not hear his name. Peter Woods is going to have a moment or two. The key is just keep going, because if you can get their other guys having to make the play, specifically SMU at one point in that ACC title game, they ran the ball at Clemson's other edge, the guy opposite TJ Parker, like 6 times in a row for 50 yards and just humiliated him. And that's the kind of stuff that Clemson has that Texas doesn't. Like, if we've got a guy who's not ideal against a certain play or, being picked on, we can sub or we can go to a different defense and address that like that. And that is why that kind of flexibility and versatility is why the Texas defense is so elite. So, just keep in mind, I know we've had a lot of offensive struggles, but we've had 2 weeks to heal, 2 weeks to rest up, and 2 weeks of script work, Joe. If I had to have you write a script for a movie in a week, I bet it's not going to be as good if you wrote it in 2 weeks.
Go to yards per play. Offensive yards per play, the Clemson Tigers are at 6.55, number 16 in the country. Defensive yards per play, 5.27. 5 is kind of thought to be elite, real upper tier. I think Texas is allowing 4 for comparison. Yeah. So that tells you where they're at, and that's number 1. So still, again, these are just seems to be more stats that really reflect they're a good team, but not an elite Clemson team of old. This I got from, I think, college football. I'll have to remember it. But they have some expected EPA values for some various stats. In fact, EPA. So I'll go through a few of them. These are ones they had as green. So if you ever see one of these charts, it's, they'll have nothing listed. They'll have it green, which I don't know what their cutoff is, but it's positive. Better than the rest, and then they'll have some red ones we'll get to. Offensive line yards per rush, 3.4 yards. Second level yards per rush on offense, 1.3. Points per opportunity, which is a little bit different than points per drive. They have 4.4 drives per game that reach the plus 40. And then this one's expected points added. Just every play is expected to add or subtract a certain amount of points. Their passing explosiveness, their big plays, as you would expect from an offense that has some air raid tendencies, 1.47. Do you think, just to go back, this offensive line yards per rush, how much do you think that's buoyed by Klubnik?
It's Klubnik and the spread. It's Klubnik and the scheme. This is the Clemson offensive line is average. They're not driving people off the ball. What people are doing is choosing to cover, and that's creating big seams and cracks where they can just hand the ball off. The other part of it is Phil Maffa. When he was healthy, he was Robin to K. Klubnik's Batman. And it might have been reversed in a couple of games. I mean, Maffa he's a really good back since his shoulder injury, and he will play through it, but he needs surgery. He's been completely ineffective. And he is a no-nonsense, 230-pound up-the-field runner. So you hand him the ball, there's a little seam. He's going to hit it hard. He's not going to dance around. Unfortunately, he's so denigrated. I don't think he's going to be a big problem for us. The second-team Clemson guy blew out his knee. Third-teamer is a jag. So Clemson, we keep building up this hero ball thing for Klubnik. He's going to have to carry it 10 or 15 times, and he's going to have to throw it 40 times. And we're going to see if that's a good strategy against the Texas defense that knows he's got to be the epicenter of the offense.
One interesting stat, defensive average start. That means that teams are basically starting on their own 17 against Clemson, which to me, that kind of implies a pretty good kickoff team or enough of a punt team to where they're getting the ball out and the punter's not so bad that they mess up good field position. But this is one of the better metrics they had on their sheet. Defensive average expected points. That kind of surprised me that some of their defensive numbers, at least as far as EPA, and granted, I think defenses are going to give up points more often than they're going to score. That explains the negative. But this was still listed as a good one in that category. Havoc rate, 8% from their defensive backs. Which was, granted, I don't think you're supposed to see much havoc from DBs, but this was a good percentage. Predicted points added, 0.122. Standard down success rate, 44%. Any of those jump out at you before we move on to what was bad?
No.
All righty. Offensive predicted points added, 2.59. Here's one. Rushing explosiveness, not a very high EPA. And
earlier in the year, that was a very different story. Later in the year, their standard running game, handing the ball to the running back, is how I define a standard running game. It's just non-existent. I mean, Maffa went from averaging 6.1 yards per carry, hurts his shoulder, 2.4 yards per carry. So he's gone from excellent to horrific.
On defense, they give up 1.3 yards at the second level per rush. They're giving up, they give up some explosive plays as well on that defense too. And then that's all I had. See, only 5 stats listed in the red, so it speaks a little bit to them. And then I think before this will be a good preview of what our next topic will be. Usage rate. Cade Klubnik. Put the ball in his hands about 56% of snaps. Phil Maffa, running back. Wide receiver Antonio Williams is next. And that's all they have as far as guys above double-digit percentage.
Yeah, that usage rate at the end of the game against Texas, Klubnik's going to be over 80%.
Before we keep going, and this time I will actually toss it to LC. Hear a word from Laura Baker.
Hi, I want to tell you about Laura Baker. If you're looking for a new home in the 512 or even at this point, let's face it, 737 area code, there's only one number to call. That's Laura Baker at 512-784-0505. As a member of the elite Andy Allen team with Keller Williams, Laura has helped Longhorns find the home of their dreams in Central Texas. Just ask our resident sex symbol, Ian Boyd, who moved all the way from Michigan to Texas with Laura's help. Laura can help you find what you're looking for in the 512, the 737, or even parts of the 254 and the 210. Just, give her a call at 512-784-0505. Her email is in the description as well as the rest of her contact details. She's a friend. Give her a call.
Thank you, LC. And so with that, time to get to Hero Ball. I'm going to toss one thing out because I got this, your article pulled up. How similar is Cade Klubnik to another Garrett Riley quarterback in TCU's Max Duggan?
So that's a great question. So in terms of actual play style, they don't look similar, like on the field. Klubnik is a taller, more angular guy, big strides, beautiful deep ball, like his release, everything about it. But if you guys will recall, Max Duggan became an amazing deep ball thrower that magical year for TCU. And of course, he could create with his legs. I think Klubnik probably has a little better top end speed. I don't think he's going to hit it against us, but I put up a clip of his 50-yard touchdown run against Pittsburgh, and the Pittsburgh defenders make some interesting choices in that clip. They take some weird angles, and half their secondary is jogging watching him. It's very odd, but I don't think that's going to happen against us. But is he going to run for a first down or two on 3rd and 7? Yep, it's going to happen. Just line up again and make him do it again, and make sure he feels it when he runs. But yeah, I mean, I think they look different, but the results are very similar. And it's a very common Garrett Riley approach. Run the ball, throw it deep. The problem, though, Joe, is that Clemson doesn't have the TCU offensive line. If you'll recall, that TCU offensive line had a couple of NFL guys on the interior. And TCU had good running backs, and they had depth. They had like 3 dudes, right? Clemson has a dude, and that dude is Phil Mafah. And once he's been dinged up, they've just been really ineffective. There's no power running game for Clemson anymore. That whole element of their offense is now gone. This is now a Big 12 spread tempo, hero ball, quarterback win the game offense. And that's really exciting to watch. And it's great when you play an average defense. The Texas defense is not average.
This is your article here, and I think this was that clip you were talking about. Oh, no, that's a Citadel.
Yeah, you can play it if you want.
Real powerhouse team. Let me see if I can get.
I don't think we'll get a YouTube strike on a Twitter clip, right? Do we? I wish Homer could.
I don't know, so I don't want to risk it. I'll just say I like those purple jerseys. But you had a very important point about how, and you just talked about it here. His deep ball ability is what really has separated the Clemson offense this year.
Incredible. So go up, if you don't mind, to the paragraph. So 36% of Klubnik's pass attempts are deep or intermediate. A third of his raw yardage is on balls 20 plus. Okay, he's the anti-Ewers. He's 31 of 72, which on deep balls is very good, for 1,128 yards, 15 touchdowns, 3 picks. 31 completions, Joe, downtown, 15 touchdowns. Half of his deep balls are 6. So, and he's hitting 43% of those, which is very good. 15.7 yards per attempt. That's incredible. But here's the crazy thing. This is like the anti-Ewers. Go on down and you'll see the depth chart. 20 plus, 15.7 yards per attempt. 10 to 19, 9.5. That's good. 0 to 9, 5.9 yards per attempt. Behind the line of scrimmage, 3.6. And you're thinking, well, those numbers should go down. You're throwing closer to the line of scrimmage. Quality passing attacks average over 7 yards an attempt behind the line of scrimmage and 0 to 9. And that is where Quinn Ewers shines, right? I can't name a quarterback in Texas football history who throws a better running back swing pass to the wide side of the field, like perfect upfield shoulder, like right there, right? When Klubnik throws that ball, the running back is jumping up for it, or the wide receiver is having to dig it out of the ground, and suddenly what should be a 7-yard gain is -2. So this is the weird thing. So people say, well, Klubnik's scary. You can scramble. You can run around. Oh, no, I'm scared. My pants are full of urine. However, what are we good at denying opposing offenses, Joe?
I was going to say anything in the pass game, but I'm curious what specific you're looking at here.
Deep balls.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't hit us over the top. And that's quite a contrast from last year, where that's all people did. And if you can take that away, and Clemson doesn't have their standard run game, where is their explosiveness in their offense coming? Where's their down-to-down consistency? We're asking Cade Klubnik and the Clemson offense to nickel and dime us, moving up and down the field. They haven't shown any facility for doing that. So if they spent the last 2 weeks reinventing themselves as late Tom Brady Patriots offense, 5-yard completion, 9-yard completion, 3-yard completion. God bless them, but I don't think we're going to allow that to happen. And we've got too many good players in space who can tackle. So I don't know, man. I'm not super optimistic that Clemson can get stuff done on offense short of Cade Klubnik turning in the performance of the century.
I think one of the storylines for Clemson this whole season is about how we had mentioned they're not fully, they don't have the Justin Rosses and those types of guys walking around, but they made a little bit of a change at a certain point in the season to be like, look, we need to go get these younger wide receivers, of which a guy like Bryant Wesco is one of them. Need to get him involved, get them in the ball. I know they lost Troy Stellato, who was a decent player, but was always banged up. How much of that switch maybe to those younger wide receivers helped unlock the deep ball part and maybe has them strong in the short stuff where you need, someone to block for sometimes?
Yeah, so Joe, that's a great point. You broke up a little bit, but the point you made was this youth infusion of the Clemson wide receivers. Has that opened up this game? But is that youth also responsible for inefficiency in the short game? Yes and yes. So Clemson's issue last year is they had a bunch of veteran receivers who were terrible. And then they went out and recruited guys like Bryant Wesco from Texas. And they've really upgraded their receiving group. Those guys are good down the field. They're talented. However, hitting big deep shots against the Citadel, Appalachian State, Virginia, that's very different from hitting it against Texas. And when you throttle off that part of their offense, they have to go to more of an efficient read-based offense. I think we're going to play some zones, Joe, because we want to keep our eyes on Klubnik. And those young receivers are going to have to know where to settle in on the zone and present themselves. And young receivers are not very good at making those reads. And that's a big reason for their inefficiency, not just their blocking. So I think that that's going to be a part of our strategy. Someone had asked at the beginning of the show, do we want a spy dedicated to Klubnik at all times? The answer is sometimes. When we're playing man, yes. When we're in zone, no. We don't need a spy. Just play your role and realize that we've got a lot of chasers, right? We've got flushers, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, and we've got chasers, Trey Moore, Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, David Benda when he's on the field. They can run down Cade Klubnik when he starts to elongate and spread and escape and bail out the pocket, or, Clemson's trying to play side-to-side games. I think we're in good shape if we just don't overreact to Klubnik's legs and just concede he's going to run a couple of times. It's not a big deal. The key is holding down their explosives, because I just don't see them having a 17-play, 80-yard touchdown drive.
One of the things that also goes into your hero ball, if I can find it correctly, find the right way to the hero ball aspect of Klubnik is obviously you talk about the deep passing, but there is the rushing aspect of it. And if I can get this pulled up, here we go. Here's Klubnik's game log via the always fantastic Sports Reference.
Notice how all of his rushing attempts. Notice all the double-digit rushing attempts starting at the Louisville game. And then notice the break was the Citadel. Obviously, Klubnik got pulled out of that game in the early third quarter. But every other game, between 10 and 15 rushing attempts.
Louisville was a loss along with Georgia, their only ACC loss. But, man, look at that 56. And remember, sacks, which I don't know how many were in this game, are count as rushes in college. But in a game where I'm guessing they had to come back at some point because of them being down in this one, they put the ball in Klubnik's hands at least 68 times.
Yeah, probably not a winning formula.
Which is extravagant for anybody. And then going all the way down to South Carolina, 46. Like 50 is kind of that magic hero ball number, because you typically only get about 70 to 75 snaps in a normal game unless some crazy stuff happens. And so to put all this onto Klubnik, like you just keep mentioning, like we've explained, speaks to how much that offense literally depends on him. I mean, even if you look at Virginia Tech, which I'll find that was a game that was 24-14. So a little bit close, not a fantastic Hokie team. They still had to give him the ball 50 times.
Well, check out SMU. So this is a game where Clemson got out to a big lead. And despite having a big lead, Klubnik has to touch the ball or be the primary on 55 plays, 41 pass attempts, 14 rushes. So that just shows you like the burden of this offense is squarely on his shoulders. And Texas has got to make him feel that burden.
There's a lot of Westlake overlap, and people think about Sam Ehlinger, different styles, obviously, but you can look at some of the processes and results that are similar, because look, I think it was the 2018 Oklahoma game, one of several Oklahoma games. Sam had like 70 touches.
Yeah, he carried it 25 times and threw it 45, and just every play was him.
Exactly. And remember, we complained a lot about how Sam Ehlinger could not complete deep balls at a very good clip. There was that whole year where it was a 2018 year, his most prolific on offense, or his second most prolific up there, where they did not have a play further than 50 yards. They just dinked and dunked and ran down the field. And that part of that was because Ehlinger could not complete deep balls with very good accuracy to big receivers like Colin Johnson, little Jordan Humphrey, and a fast guy, and then a speedster like Devin Duvernay. Do you think that'll affect how Clemson is able to complete deep balls for this game, or has it kind of been proven that maybe Klubnik's almost a little bit of has some sort of immunity to that?
Well, he's not carrying the kind of running burden that Sam did, or the hit burden that Sam did. I mean, Sam was our power red zone fullback, right? Quarterback lead, quarterback counter was our staple in the red zone. And he's taking big shots. It's something I've written about a lot because people would complain about that, but it's the video gamification of football. People who haven't played football, and I'm not trying to do the I just played high school football, but football hurts. And when you play quarterback and you get hit a lot, those beautiful September throws in December, your shoulders like mildly separated. You're got bangs and bruises, your ankles sprained, like you're just messed up and you can't throw anymore. If you guys will remember way back in the day, Eric Crouch was the option quarterback for Nebraska. Joe, if you'll go back and watch Eric Crouch, he's throwing these beautiful deep balls off play action in early September for Nebraska. And by October, it'd be 3rd and 8, and Eric Crouch would throw a ball that would skip 6 yards in front of the receiver. I mean, you just take a beating and there's a burden on the quarterback. That's why Lamar Jackson is not human. I mean,
right.
I don't know how he does it at the NFL level.
That's why Kyler Murray, one of his best attributes is avoiding hits, because he has to at 5'9", 190.
But to your point, Klubnik has not had that kind of burden until recently, and then the 2-week break is going to help him be a little more spry. But again, you can do this to him in game. Hits that look innocuous on television in the first and second quarter. Sometimes when you're at field level, it looks and feels different than from what you see on TV. And you can degrade his ability to throw the ball just by hitting him really freaking hard.
I love how we let Eric Crouch do that in November, and then we fed him to the Wolves. It was the Miami Hurricanes on January.
That's right.
That didn't go very far. Anything else big on Klubnik, or ready to look a little bit through the schedule and how Clemson got to this college football playoff?
Let's look at that brutal ACC schedule.
All right. We'll go over this will be the offensive game log. Let me see. Hit the wrong button. And their defense is right below it. Clemson Tigers 2024 game log. Here we go. As our friend Nice to Logic, don't make the SEC look bad. Fully expect to see Cows in the Natty. We beat your first playoff opponent by 31, so no excuses for the fighting McConaughey's. Hey, he is kind of like a mascot. But, Georgia just put the clamps on Clemson in a way that no other team in the ACC could. Beat the dog out of a bad App State team. Beat the dog out of a below average NC State team. Struggled with Florida State.
And I had the misfortune of watching that game. It was just ugly game. It was never in doubt. That's for sure. Louisville's interesting. They got game planned, man. Clemson had the better team. Louisville just game planned them and kicked their ass. And they had a great solution for the spread. Braum, as always, is going to pick one or two games on their schedule and just dial up genius offense, like single shot plays. And that's exactly what Louisville did to them. Interesting thing, Louisville's strength, Joe, edge pressure. Very mediocre defense, but they played their safeties deep to disallow any deep ball, and look at the underneath inefficiency for Klubnik. And then they brought the pass rush. And Clemson and Klubnik had no answers. They ran the ball actually pretty effectively with Maffa, but it didn't really have any effect on the game outcome.
101 total plays, 4.5 yards per play.
A lot of tempo.
Yeah.
So look at those point totals. Forget the Citadel. 21 points, 24 points, 24 points, 14 points. And then we talked about the SMU score being deceptive because of short fields. So, Clemson's had trouble getting the ball in the end zone. South Carolina was interesting, Joe. I don't know if you watched this game. I watched a good bit of it because I kind of fell in love with South Carolina and adopted them about halfway through the year. And I may have had money on this game on South Carolina. So Clemson actually had a great game plan. They executed it well. But whenever they got near the red zone, they couldn't get it done. And that 14 points is not reflective of their offensive output. Look, you can see 419 yards of offense, 6.1 yards per play. You would expect them to have at least scored in the 20s with that. Mm-hmm. But South Carolina kept clamping down on them. And again, another aspect of hero ball and Big 12 style spread O is you kind of go between the 20s a lot. But as the field compresses and teams play your receiving options differently and they don't respect your running game, the red zone just becomes a chore. And that's what the Texas defense has to do. If Clemson makes a play or two and they get in our red zone, it's got to be a turnover on downs or a field goal every time.
Do you take anything from them being, I guess you could even say 1-3 against the four best teams on their schedule?
I do. I think it makes them a team that barely got into the playoff because they play in the ACC. Yeah. I think you're exactly right, Joe. I mean, Georgia beat their ass. South Carolina beat them at Clemson, which is not an easy environment. Louisville really controlled them, and Louisville's not very talented. Like, if you watch that team, they're an 8-4 ACC team with a pretty easy schedule. And then SMU, that's probably their best win. But if you can look me in the eye and tell me exactly how good SMU is, you're seeing stuff that I don't see or know, because I'm not sure how good they are, and I'm kind of thinking they might go up to Penn State and get unmasked.
Especially if it's cold, which it tends to be in Happy Valley.
Yes, sure.
Here's the defensive stats. Citadel doesn't pass, so don't worry about that. Don't worry about Citadel. Just trying to see if anything jumps out. That definitely does. Giving up 4 touchdown passes to Virginia.
Anthony Calandria.
Who did he portal or declare?
I think he's portaling. He's not declaring. He's the NFL's not ready for the Anthony Calandria experience.
I'm trying to look at all this stuff in the middle, but the real number to probably pay attention to, way over here on the right. 3 turnovers, 3 turnovers, 3 turnovers. Just
Yeah, they're good at forcing turnovers.
Oh, the 2 of their losses, they forced 0 turnovers.
Their last 5 games, Joe, they have forced 12 turnovers. And that's about the rate that Texas's D is forcing turnovers. So that's a good comparator. And that's what's keeping them alive in some of these. So if we just take care of the ball, I mean, this is so boring and anodyne. If we take care of the ball, run our offense, and play great defense, we're going to win this game.
This is funny. Look at the rushing numbers by Citadel. If you don't know,
they run like a academy option type offense. We're not going to be able to simulate that with old Quinn.
But they're it's at the FCS level too. So
yeah. Well, do you remember that famous game where Georgia Southern, back when they ran the pure running like veer attack,
Willie Fritz offense, right?
Yeah, they dropped like 300 and something rushing yards on Alabama, which had like 5 first-round draft picks on their defense. And in the post-game press conference, Saban was like, "Yeah, we don't have time to prepare for it. They beat our ass. We deserved every bit of that."
That may have been they ran through our ass like shit through a tin horn.
That's it.
That was, golly, so many high quality quotes.
Joey Austin in the chat says, "Use the Trey Owens package." Yes, sir. That's what we've been holding back for the playoffs.
Hey, there's I will say maybe we can kind of exhausted all the Clemson stuff, can get out of here on what the pressing issue seems to be is like how much, or maybe not in Sark's mind, but among fans' minds for sure, how much do you maybe use Arch Manning in one of these games?
You got to pull up Nathan's comment in the chat. Phil Maffa has fallen off. Awesome, Nathan. You're the man. You've won this chat. I mean, look, we'll see Arch. And like, okay, we're all getting it twisted. So here's the reality. Arch Manning is an NFL-style pro quarterback who happens to be big, strong, and athletic. Because he's big, strong, and athletic, to get him playing time and to shake off some of the malaise of our short yardage and red zone was we can put him in games and do some different stuff, right? He's not Tim Tebow. He's not freaking Jamel Holloway, wishbone quarterback. Like, so we're getting it kind of twisted on like that aspect. Now, could there be some value in putting him in on a 3rd and 1 and then throwing it deep? That would be awesome. But I think we'll see some Arch, but a lot of this is a way to hedge bets, frankly. And we've not talked enough about this. We're trying to get Arch real playing experience in games because Ewers has been injured and Ewers has fallen off in his level of play. So we're entering a sudden death, no forgiveness format of playoffs. If Ewers gets hurt or his play is very poor, partly because he gets hurt, we got to be able to put Arch Manning in the game and not have his eyes be as big as saucers. So that's the other part of that package of just getting Arch game reps, not only to help our team, but I just think that we talk about it a lot. Just like Quinn Ewers is the quarterback, and if he has a bad quarter, we're not pulling him. Like, we'll need to see disastrous level of play for Quinn Ewers to be pulled, and I think that would apply to almost any quarterback.
Yeah, it could be John Smith and Will Jackson, and much of the same would still apply. And I understand a lot of the conversation, but there's a point to where I'm like, well, switch Arch. Okay, make that point. Because Arch is better, we have no way of knowing that.
Well, and again, if that's your belief, you would have made that switch in October when Ewers was out and injured, because then you want to build up the game experience for Arch. It's too late. The cake is baked. We're going to eat it. So, just deal with that. We're not doing Arch Manning's not coming out for the first series. This cake is baked, go.
One last fun thing to get out on. How many times will Klubnik go after Taff.
He better not.
Klubnik, Taff was available. Have you ever actually tackled Cade Klubnik? Because there's no way Todd Dodge is letting like Cade Klubnik be live during some plays. And he said, I think it was either like a sub-varsity Westlake practice or scrimmage. Cade was live, so I got to put a hit on him, and Taff had a pretty good line. It's like, look, if you're not wearing the same jersey as me, I'm out there trying to take your soul, even if I grew up going to, Barton Hills not Barton Hills Elementary, but Westlake High, and living off of Walsh Tarleton. So they're going to be friends after the game, but there's going to be no love lost between them in the game. Should be fun. A lot of great storylines for two teams that have never played each other at all.
It is wild we've never played Clemson. Isn't that weird? Just existing in parallel college football universes.
And that's the team that at certain points hit national prominence. Like obviously the early 80s.
Yeah.
And then again in the 2010s.
All right. So Joe, I know you're a college football historian. Without Googling, who was the coach for Clemson pre-Dabo that won the national title at Clemson?
Okay. Well, before Dabo, it was Terry Bowden, because we've talked about that. Or it was Terry Bowden. But who won the it's someone that you would Frank Howard?
No.
Dang it. Okay.
Danny Ford.
That's right. It's like one you just
it was in 81.
Right.
And it was back in, this wasn't like a BYU national title where they beat like a 7-5 Michigan team and like had the 97th ranked strength of schedule, like the famous BYU national title in 84, 85. But it felt that way a little bit. They did win their bowl game against like a okay opponent, but people complain about the playoffs. People complain about the BCS. Trust me, if you're old enough to remember the old bowl system, it was messed up. I mean, you had, teams winning the national title off of beating the number 23 ranked team in the country. So,
and in certain years, you had 3 to 4 different teams put real claims in, and
A&M claims 47 national titles based on that. So, because the College Station Daily Shopper said that A&M won it. So,
Ohio Stadium, Memorial Stadium in Lincoln, and Texas Memorial Stadium in Austin all say 1970 national champions on it.
That's right.
At least we, unless you're Scott Frost, at least there's only one. So I think with that'll do it. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and head to InsideTexas.com. We have a $1 for 1 week promo still going on to get all the playoff intel, portal intel, anything about this game, a potential next game, and potential players on next year's roster. So, Paul, appreciate you a ton. We'll see you next time on the Inside Texas Football YouTube channel powered by InsideTexas.com.